Have you ever wondered what makes leaders successful? What is it about certain people that allow them to gain power and influence, no matter what the cost? Today, we're going to take a deep dive into one of the most fascinating and controversial thinkers in history, Niccolò Machiavelli. Known for his groundbreaking work, The Prince, Machiavelli changed the way we think about power, manipulation, and control. But here's the thing. Machiavelli wasn't just talking about kings and politicians. He was talking about all of us. In this video, we'll explore how Machiavellian principles are used today, not through brute force or medieval cruelty, but through modern, sophisticated methods that shape our everyday lives. From political campaigns to business strategies, from social media influencers to corporate CEOs, Machiavelli's teachings are all around us, influencing decisions and behaviors we might not even realize. So, how do these principles work? Are they really as sinister as they seem, or can they be used for good? Can they help you become more successful, more influential, and more powerful in your own life? We'll also discuss the ethical side of Machiavelli's theories. Do these methods work only when applied ruthlessly, or can they be adapted to create positive change? Should we embrace them, or should we be cautious, recognizing when others are using these strategies against us? By the end of this video, you'll understand the hidden dynamics of power that govern everything around us, and how you can use these insights to protect yourself or even elevate your own influence. But before we dive in, make sure to like this video, share it with anyone who loves philosophy, power, psychology, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the complexities of human behavior. If you want to show your support, consider leaving a super thanks. It helps us keep creating content like this for you. Let's get started. What would you do if you had the tools to master power? You might be surprised by what you learn. Niccolò Machiavelli, an Italian diplomat, philosopher, and writer from the Renaissance, is often remembered for his controversial treatise, The Prince. This book, sometimes regarded as a manual for ruthless political manipulation, has become synonymous with the idea of power, control, and influence. Machiavelli stripped away moral illusions to reveal the raw mechanisms of human behavior, a perspective that continues to resonate in the modern world. His insights aren't just for politicians or leaders, they are universal strategies that shape human relationships, businesses, and even personal interactions. The influence of Machiavelli's ideas remains undeniable today, though his principles can feel uncomfortable. Why? Because his work asks us to look at the world not through idealistic lenses, but through the harsh reality of human nature. The way he broke down power dynamics, focusing not on what should be, but on what is perhaps the most unsettling part. When you understand his view of human nature, you begin to see the hidden forces that drive behavior, forces that shape everything from global politics to your daily interactions with others. And this, ultimately, is the true power of Machiavelli's insights. They expose how easily we can be manipulated and how control works beneath the surface of our actions and decisions. To understand the relevance of Machiavelli today, consider this. In a world of business, it's not always the most competent person who rises to the top. Rather, it's the person who can manage perceptions, navigate office politics, and manipulate situations in their favor. In personal relationships, this is just as true. The friends or romantic partners who seem to have it all together are often the ones who have mastered the art of impression management, as Machiavelli described. Their outward behavior hides their true intentions, giving them power over those who are simply reacting to what they see on the surface. Now, you might wonder, why do Machiavelli's ideas still hold so much weight? The truth is, human nature hasn't changed much since the 16th century. We still act out of self-interest, fear, and a desire for power. In many ways, the social and political structures we see today, corporate hierarchies, political campaigns, social media influencers, are modern-day applications of the same principles Machiavelli wrote about centuries ago. The difference is that today, manipulation and control are far subtler. Rather than overt coercion or violence, the powerful now use more sophisticated methods, such as shaping narratives and creating perceptions to influence the masses. One clear example of this can be seen in the world of politics. Take, for instance, a modern political campaign. Politicians don't just run on their record, they craft a narrative. They stage photo opportunities, deliver speeches designed to elicit specific emotions, and even manipulate the timing of policy announcements to sway public opinion. The goal is not just to appeal to the electorate, but to create an image of strength, reliability, and leadership. This is Machiavellian manipulation at work, albeit in a more polished, modern form. The politician may not be as overtly cruel as Machiavelli's ideal prince, but they still use many of his principles to gain and maintain power. The same is true in business. Consider a successful CEO, not necessarily the most skilled in their field, but perhaps the most adept at managing perceptions. They might not do all the work themselves, but they make sure to take credit for the results, surround themselves with loyal followers, and ensure that the public sees them as visionary. This is the power of perception, something Machiavelli understood well. By shaping how others see you, whether through media, personal image, or strategic actions, you can manipulate the narrative in your favor. But perhaps the most relatable example of Machiavellian manipulation can be found in everyday personal relationships. Think about the dynamics in friendships or romantic partnerships. How often do people act in ways that serve their self-interest, even when it's not immediately apparent? A friend who constantly promises support but is nowhere to be found when you need them. Or a partner who expresses grand gestures of affection but fails to show consistency in their actions. These are examples of people managing their image while neglecting the substance behind it. Machiavelli's philosophy helps us understand that what people say and what they do can be entirely different, and the ability to manage that discrepancy is what allows them to maintain control over relationships. Machiavelli's ideas may be unsettling, but they also offer a pragmatic lens through which to understand the world. At the core of his work is the idea that power, whether in politics, business, or personal relationships, is often about managing perception, manipulating the environment, and responding to the basic human drives of fear, self-interest, and self-preservation. The rules of power may not be explicitly taught in schools or workplaces, but they operate just beneath the surface, shaping how decisions are made, how people interact, and how societies function. The significance of Machiavelli's principles is clear. They expose the undercurrents of influence that most of us are unaware of, but that we are constantly subjected to. By understanding these dynamics, we can navigate the complexities of power more effectively. We may choose to use these principles for good or ill, but the fact remains that they are a part of the world we live in, undeniable and unchanging. So, why should you care about Machiavelli's ideas? Because understanding how power works in all its forms gives you an edge. Whether you're trying to climb the corporate ladder, influence people in your personal life, or simply protect yourself from being manipulated, the knowledge of how power operates will serve you well. Machiavelli didn't just describe the mechanics of power, he gave us the tools to understand, and if we choose, to wield it ourselves. Machiavelli's perspective on human nature is one of the most defining and controversial aspects of his work. He argued that human beings are not driven by reason or lofty ideals, but by two fundamental forces: fear and self-interest. According to Machiavelli, these forces shape the way people behave, make decisions, and ultimately respond to situations. Unlike many philosophers of his time, who believed in the innate goodness of people or their capacity for rational thought, Machiavelli stripped away these idealistic views and offered a more cynical, yet arguably realistic, understanding of humanity. This notion that people are driven primarily by self-preservation and immediate gratification may seem harsh, but it is undeniably accurate in many situations. Machiavelli's genius was not in inventing this concept, but in recognizing the patterns of behavior that govern human actions. These behaviors, rooted in fear and self-interest, are not just a product of individual psychology, but are deeply ingrained in the social and political systems we interact with every day. Take, for instance, the typical office environment. Think about how people behave when they feel their job is at risk. The employee who, up until that point, was always friendly and collegial, suddenly starts acting in a self-serving manner, becoming more competitive and protective of their position. This shift isn't because they've suddenly become a bad person. It's because they are reacting to the very real fear of losing their livelihood. Similarly, consider the person who always seems to be making excuses for why they can't help others, constantly putting their own needs first. The common thread here is self-interest, which can manifest as an instinctive drive for personal gain, security, and status. Machiavelli's observation is simple. When faced with uncertainty or danger, people tend to prioritize their own survival and well-being over abstract ideals or long-term consequences. In essence, they act in ways that are beneficial to them in the moment. This doesn't mean that humans are inherently bad. It simply means that, in the face of pressure, most individuals will choose the path that appears to offer immediate reward or protection. Understanding this fundamental truth about human nature provides an invaluable advantage in many areas of life. For example, when negotiating, whether in business or personal relationships, recognizing that your counterpart is likely motivated by self-interest and fear can help you anticipate their behavior. If you know that someone's primary concern is avoiding loss or securing gain, you can tailor your approach to appeal to those motivations. A savvy negotiator might avoid making personal attacks or pushing too hard on contentious points, instead emphasizing how the deal benefits the other party. This creates an environment where the other person feels that their self-interest is being served, reducing their fear of making concessions. Moreover, understanding the role of fear and self-interest can help you see through manipulative behaviors that others might use to influence you. In the workplace, for instance, it's easy to become entangled in office politics, where people often pretend to be friends or allies while secretly working in their own best interests. Recognizing that people are often driven by fear of losing their position or status can help you make sense of otherwise confusing or contradictory behaviors. Someone who suddenly starts flattering you may not be doing so out of genuine admiration. They might simply be trying to gain your favor in order to protect their position or secure some kind of advantage. In a similar vein, a friend who is overly critical of your decisions may be acting out of a subconscious fear of losing your friendship or status within the group. Consider the political landscape, where Machiavelli's theory of self-interest and fear is clearly evident. Politicians often appear to act in the interest of the public, yet their real motivations are often tied to maintaining their own power, wealth, and influence. For instance, during election campaigns, candidates may champion causes that resonate with voters. But once in office, Machiavelli observed the same dynamics centuries ago. He understood that most people, especially those in positions of power, make decisions based on what will advance their personal interests rather than what is morally right or best for society as a whole. In personal relationships, fear and self-interest can also play a major role in shaping people's behavior. How often do we see individuals acting out of fear of rejection or loss, leading them to say or do things they might not otherwise? In romantic relationships, for example, one partner might give excessive praise or gestures of affection, not necessarily out of love, but out of a desire to maintain the relationship for fear of losing the other person. Similarly, a friend who always needs to be the center of attention or tries to one-up you might be driven by insecurity, seeking to ensure they are not left behind or overshadowed. These are all examples of self-interest in action, where the individual's behavior is motivated by an internal desire to secure their position in the relationship or group. One of the most powerful implications of understanding Machiavelli's view of human nature is that it allows us to see the true motivations behind people's actions, even when they're trying to disguise or manipulate those motivations. When you can see through the veil of politeness and social norms, you begin to recognize the real reasons why people do what they do. This is not to say that everyone is constantly scheming or acting purely out of self-interest. but it does mean that much of what we perceive as genuine behavior is often influenced by underlying fears and desires for personal gain. This knowledge also provides the opportunity to make more informed decisions about whom to trust and how to engage with others. For instance, understanding that fear and self-interest play a huge role in the way people interact can help you navigate complex social situations. If someone is constantly trying to impress you or make themselves look good, it might not be because they genuinely admire you. Instead, it could be because they're trying to secure your approval to advance their own agenda. In contrast, someone who acts selflessly or consistently looks out for others' interests might be less concerned with their own personal gain, though it is still important to remain cautious of any hidden motives. When it comes to leadership, recognizing the role of fear and self-interest is crucial. A good leader understands that their team members are often driven by these basic forces. They can use this knowledge to build trust, motivate employees, and navigate conflicts. For example, a leader who acknowledges the fear and insecurity that can accompany job loss might offer reassurances or provide opportunities for professional growth, thereby reducing fear and increasing loyalty. By addressing the self-interest of team members, a leader can create an environment where individuals are more likely to work together toward common goals. In conclusion, Machiavelli's insights into human nature are both timeless and universally applicable. By acknowledging that people often make decisions based on fear and self-interest rather than reason, we can better understand the dynamics that influence behavior in all aspects of life. This awareness allows us to navigate social, political, and personal interactions more effectively. As we become more adept at recognizing the true motivations behind people's actions. While Machiavelli's view may seem harsh, it is grounded in a realistic understanding of human behavior that, when applied thoughtfully, can lead to more strategic and informed decision-making. Machiavelli's understanding of manipulation is grounded in the recognition that appearances often matter more than reality in the exercise of power. He argued that those who rise to power, or who wish to maintain their power, must not only understand the nature of human beings, but also be able to manage perceptions and behaviors. The core of Machiavellian manipulation is the ability to appear virtuous while strategically acting in ways that serve one's interests. In other words, leaders must sometimes fake good qualities to retain control, even if their true actions betray those ideals. This principle of manipulation is not about being deceitful for the sake of being malicious, but about realizing that power is often built on perception, and maintaining that perception is crucial to sustaining control. One of the most famous and controversial aspects of Machiavelli's work is his argument that it is better to appear virtuous than to actually be virtuous. This is because, according to him, public perception is the key to maintaining power. In The Prince, Machiavelli notes that a leader should appear to be compassionate, trustworthy, religious, and just, but when necessary, they must be able to abandon these virtues to achieve their objectives. The leader who strictly adheres to moral principles might be viewed as weak or indecisive in the face of realpolitik. Conversely, a leader who can manipulate their image by appearing virtuous but acting pragmatically will often have a much greater chance of holding on to power, even if their actions occasionally contradict their public persona. At the heart of Machiavellian manipulation lies a simple truth. Human beings are primarily driven by self-interest, fear, and desire for security. Therefore, manipulating public perception allows a leader to manage how others act and react in ways that favor the leader's objectives. If a leader can create an image of reliability and trustworthiness, then others will be more likely to follow their lead, even if their actions don't fully align with those ideals. In a sense, the leader becomes an actor, playing the role of a virtuous ruler while also making cold and calculating decisions behind the scenes to maintain control. A critical aspect of Machiavellian manipulation is the ability to maintain loyalty and support, even when those loyalties are not entirely genuine. Loyalty, like virtue, is something that can be manipulated to serve one's purpose. Machiavelli understood that loyalty is not always a result of genuine affection or trust, but often comes from the fear of retaliation or the benefits of association. By understanding this, a leader can strategically create a network of supporters who are loyal to them, not because they genuinely believe in the leader's virtues, but because they fear losing favor or because they stand to gain something from maintaining that relationship. In this context, manipulation becomes a tool for maintaining power by controlling who holds loyalty and how they perceive the leader's actions. Let's consider the story of a corporate CEO who maintains a public image of compassion and fairness, always praising employees for their hard work and commitment. On the surface, this leader seems to be the embodiment of virtue. However, behind closed doors, the CEO is ruthlessly cutting costs, laying off employees without hesitation, and making decisions based on what will protect their own job security or increase their own wealth. This leader knows that the appearance of being a caring and just figure is crucial to maintaining morale among employees and to ensuring their continued loyalty. By appearing virtuous, they create a facade that shields them from potential criticism and allows them to operate with more freedom in making decisions that benefit them personally. The employees may not be happy about the cuts or the layoffs, but their loyalty to the CEO remains, in part because they fear the consequences of opposing someone who holds so much power. In this example, the leader is using the manipulation of their public persona and image of fairness and care to maintain control over their workforce. While their actions behind the scenes may not align with their public image, the workers continue to trust them because they are responding to the image, not the reality. The employees, driven by fear of job loss and their own self-interest in maintaining employment, continue to support the leader, even if they are aware that the leader's actions do not align with the virtuous image they project. This is a textbook example of how a Machiavellian leader manipulates perception to retain power. Machiavelli's principle of manipulating loyalty and virtue goes beyond just individuals in power. It can be applied to nearly any form of leadership or influence. For instance, in political campaigns, candidates often present themselves as champions of the people, promising reform, fairness, and integrity. However, once in office, they may abandon many of those promises, acting in their own interests or the interests of their donors and allies. Voters, however, continue to support them, not because they believe the politician is a moral leader, but because the politician has succeeded in manipulating their image and presenting a consistent facade that aligns with the voters' desires. The manipulation of loyalty and perception can also be seen in more everyday situations. In relationships, whether personal or professional, people often act in ways that serve their interests, even when they appear to be acting out of genuine concern for others. A partner who seems excessively generous or caring might be doing so to secure emotional or financial benefits from the relationship. Similarly, a colleague who constantly praises a manager might do so not because they believe the manager is particularly deserving, but because they fear losing their job or want to secure a promotion. The key point here is that Machiavelli's understanding of manipulation is not simply about deceiving others for the sake of self-interest. Rather, it's about leveraging human tendencies and motivations, such as the desire for security, the need for belonging, and the fear of losing status to control outcomes. By shaping the way others perceive you, and by manipulating the way they feel about their relationship with you, you can create a situation where their loyalty is tied more to their own self-interest than to any genuine moral or ethical commitment. Machiavelli's manipulation tactics, though grounded in realpolitik, don't necessarily require malicious intent. His point is that the world is full of competing interests, and in order to succeed, a leader must sometimes play the game, using the tools available to them. In the case of manipulating loyalty, Machiavelli's advice is clear. Do what is necessary to maintain control, even if that means making compromises or acting in ways that might seem morally questionable. As long as the appearance of virtue is maintained and loyalty is kept intact, the leader can continue to operate with authority. In summary, Machiavelli's principles of manipulation, particularly in the areas of loyalty and virtue, are rooted in an understanding of human psychology. By understanding the way people respond to fear, self-interest, and the desire for security, a leader can maintain control by carefully managing their public image and the loyalty of those around them. While this might seem cynical, it is a pragmatic approach to the complexities of power and influence. By mastering the art of manipulation without appearing to be manipulative, leaders can secure their position, control their environment, and achieve their goals, often without the need for overt force or coercion. This is the essence of Machiavellian control, understanding and leveraging human nature to shape the world around you. Machiavelli's thoughts on fear versus love are some of his most provocative and enduring ideas. In The Prince, he famously posits that while being loved is certainly advantageous, it is ultimately far safer for a leader to be feared than loved. This statement has caused considerable debate and even moral discomfort over the centuries, but its application to modern leadership, politics, and even personal relationships is undeniable. According to Machiavelli, fear provides a more reliable foundation for control, while love, being fickle and unstable, often leads to weakness and vulnerability. Machiavelli's argument is built on a practical observation about human nature. People, by and large, are inconsistent and self-interested. They may love or admire someone when it is convenient or when it aligns with their own interests, but when push comes to shove, fear tends to override affection. The key point here is that love, as a motivating force, is conditional. It requires effort, sacrifice, and, more importantly, reciprocity. People are willing to love or support someone only as long as it benefits them. But when circumstances change, when people feel their own position is threatened, or when their personal interests are no longer served, their loyalty tends to evaporate. Fear, on the other hand, is a much more stable and consistent motivator. When people fear the consequences of disobedience, betrayal, or failure to comply with expectations, they're far more likely to remain loyal, regardless of whether they feel affection or love. Machiavelli's insights on this subject draw from the idea that fear creates a psychological mechanism that keeps people in check. Fear isn't about terror or cruelty. It is about ensuring that the consequences for disobedience are clear, consistent, and inevitable. It's a control mechanism that leverages people's natural inclination to avoid pain and loss. When fear is present, people are less likely to challenge authority, disrupt the status quo, or act in ways that undermine the leader's position. This is in stark contrast to the instability that love can bring. Love requires constant validation, and in the absence of that validation, people may turn away. Fear, however, remains unshaken as long as there are tangible consequences to one's actions. Let's consider a real-world example in a workplace environment. Imagine two different types of bosses. The first is a strict, no-nonsense manager who sets clear rules and expectations and consistently enforces them. This boss isn't overly concerned with making everyone like them, but they make sure that the workplace runs smoothly, everyone understands their role, and that failure to meet expectations results in consequences, whether that's a warning, a reduction in responsibilities, or even termination. The second boss is someone who is very well liked by their team. They often go out of their way to make employees feel comfortable, and they focus heavily on creating a warm, friendly atmosphere. However, this boss lacks clear guidelines, and when problems arise, they're hesitant to take decisive action or enforce discipline. In this environment, people enjoy the camaraderie and warmth, but they may take liberties, miss deadlines, or fail to perform at their best because they know there are no clear-cut consequences for their actions. The result is a more chaotic and less productive work environment. In the first scenario, the employees may not always like their boss, but they respect them. They know that if they don't follow the rules, there will be consequences, and that creates a stable and predictable environment. The boss's authority is never in question, even if there are occasional frustrations with the leadership style. This respect is grounded in fear, not of arbitrary punishment or cruelty. but of the clear and consistent consequences for poor performance. The employees understand the stakes. They can fail to meet expectations, but they know there will be repercussions. This sense of predictability and certainty helps maintain order and discipline in the workplace. Contrast this with the second boss. While this manager might be loved by their employees, the lack of clear expectations and the absence of accountability can cause confusion, uncertainty, and frustration. Employees may like the friendly atmosphere, but over time, they begin to take advantage of the lenient environment. Some may miss deadlines, others may slack off, and the overall performance of the team suffers. The reason is simple. Love and affection from a leader are not enough to sustain long-term loyalty or performance. Employees may feel affection for the boss, but when faced with the opportunity to slack off or push the boundaries, their loyalty weakens because the fear of consequences is absent. This dynamic is not limited to the workplace. It plays out in many aspects of life. Think about political leaders who rise to power based on their ability to inspire affection or loyalty among their supporters. These leaders might win elections by appealing to voters' emotions, promising change, and presenting themselves as champions of the people. But once in office, they face the harsh realities of governance, the complexities of foreign relations, economic pressures, and internal party dynamics. In these situations, their power is often contingent on the support of various factions and interest groups. If they cannot maintain that support, if their decisions do not align with the interests of their key supporters, then their position becomes precarious. When the love and affection they initially garnered start to wane, their power can quickly dissipate. Conversely, a leader who is feared doesn't rely on fickle support. While fear may seem harsh, it establishes a framework within which people understand their relationship with power. Think of autocratic leaders, for instance. While many people may not love them, they fear the consequences of opposing them. In such regimes, the leaders maintain power not because they are beloved, but because people understand that defying the leader could result in imprisonment, exile, or worse. This understanding, rooted in fear, ensures compliance and loyalty, even in the absence of genuine affection. Of course, Machiavelli makes it clear that there is a balance to strike. A leader who inspires fear must be careful not to cross the line into hatred. If the fear becomes so overwhelming that it breeds animosity, people will actively seek to overthrow the leader. However, if the fear is calibrated properly, if it is based on a clear and consistent set of rules and consequences, it becomes a tool for maintaining order and control. Fear, when managed properly, can be a stabilizing force, creating a predictable environment in which people understand what is expected of them and the penalties for failing to meet those expectations. Another key aspect of Machiavelli's thoughts on fear versus love is the long-term sustainability of each approach. While love might create a short-term bond, fear creates a lasting sense of control. Over time, as people begin to expect rewards or praise for their loyalty, love can become conditional. Fear, on the other hand, has an enduring quality because it is linked to tangible consequences that do not rely on emotional states. People will continue to comply as long as they fear the repercussions of non-compliance. The boss who demands performance based on clear rules and penalties ensures that the team remains disciplined and focused, even if they are not particularly well-liked. This idea is reflected in many aspects of organizational management. When there is a lack of structure or clarity, employees may perform inconsistently, shifting between periods of high motivation and periods of indifference. But when there is a clear, consistent system in place, one in which poor performance is met with consequences and good performance is rewarded, employees know exactly where they stand. This structure, underpinned by the fear of consequences, keeps the organization running efficiently and effectively. In conclusion, Machiavelli's insight about fear versus love in leadership remains relevant because it speaks to the basic human need for certainty and stability. Fear creates an environment where people understand what is expected of them and what the consequences will be if they fail to meet those expectations. While love and affection can be powerful motivators in the short term, they are ultimately unstable, and the loyalty they generate is often contingent on self-interest. Fear, by contrast, offers a more reliable and predictable means of maintaining control over time. Whether in the workplace, politics, or personal relationships, the power of fear can be harnessed to ensure loyalty, discipline, and compliance, ultimately creating a more stable and effective environment. One of Machiavelli's most impactful insights is his focus on perception management, which revolves around the understanding that how things appear to others often matters more than how they actually are. This concept lies at the core of his strategies for power maintenance, both in politics and leadership. According to Machiavelli, appearances can be far more important than reality, and leaders who master the art of controlling perceptions can wield significant influence, often without the need for direct actions that align with the image they project. This idea is particularly relevant in today's world, where the line between reality and appearance is often blurred. Machiavelli was clear about the distinction between appearance and reality. In The Prince, he writes that the public's perception of a ruler is often more important than the ruler's actual qualities or actions. He advises leaders to maintain the appearance of virtue, be it compassion, generosity, or justice, even if, in reality, they may be acting in ways that contradict these ideals. The reason behind this is simple. People judge leaders, not by their inner motivations or what they do in private, but by the image they present to the public. This is an extremely potent strategy for those seeking to maintain control or influence, as it allows them to shape how others perceive them without the need for total alignment with their public image. In the realm of modern politics, this idea is practically ubiquitous. Consider how political candidates craft their public personas during campaigns. They spend enormous amounts of time and money on carefully orchestrated speeches, photo opportunities, and media interactions to create a persona that aligns with what the electorate desires. Whether it's projecting an image of strength, kindness, or expertise, these carefully constructed images are designed to garner votes and maintain public support. In many cases, the persona they create during their campaign is vastly different from the person there once they take office. However, the electorate's perceptions, shaped by those campaigns, are often what matters most in terms of maintaining a politician's power. For example, think of a presidential candidate who campaigns on promises of transparency, integrity, and fighting for the common man. Once elected, this same politician may find it more convenient to make deals with powerful corporations or avoid tackling the issues they promise to address. Despite this, the image of the politician as a fighter for the people often endures in the public's mind because it has been so carefully crafted. The politician's actual behavior may not match the image, but the image itself has become a powerful force, ensuring continued support from constituents who buy into the crafted narrative. In this case, perception has successfully overridden reality, allowing the politician to maintain their position of power despite actions that may not align with their promises. This phenomenon is not limited to politicians alone. Corporate leaders, celebrities, and even social media influencers use similar techniques to maintain their influence. Take, for instance, a CEO of a tech company who presents themselves as a visionary leader with a passion for innovation and societal good. Their public persona is one of someone who is always striving for progress and acting in the best interests of their employees and customers. However, behind the scenes, the CEO might be making decisions that prioritize profits over people, cutting costs by laying off workers or pushing products with questionable ethical implications. Yet, the carefully constructed image of the CEO as a benevolent leader is so ingrained in the public's mind that it shields them from scrutiny. The CEO's true actions may conflict with their public image, but the image itself has a far-reaching power to influence how they are perceived and, by extension, how much influence they can maintain. Machiavelli's strategy, then, is not just about deceiving others, but about understanding the psychological power of perception. He advises that a ruler or any person in power should be able to cultivate a public persona that aligns with the virtues that society deems most desirable, even if the leader does not always embody those virtues in practice. This allows the leader to manipulate how others perceive them and, in turn, secure their position and influence. Machiavelli doesn't necessarily suggest that leaders should lie outright, but he does recognize that selective presentation of certain qualities can lead to greater control over the people they lead. One way Machiavelli's concept of perception management applies to the modern world is through the art of symbolic actions. In today's world, appearances can often be built around singular, highly visible actions rather than consistent, behind-the-scenes work. A politician who makes a high-profile visit to a disaster zone, for example, may receive more public acclaim than one who works diligently behind the scenes to implement long-term policy solutions. The symbolic act, the public display of caring, is what garners attention and shapes public opinion, even if the long-term impact of the actual policies may be less visible. In a similar way, business leaders who make public gestures of charity or publicly praise their employees might create an image of benevolence, even if the daily operations or their overall approach to leadership don't reflect the same values. An example that illustrates this idea well is the way businesses often manage their image through charitable contributions. A corporation might donate a substantial sum to a charity in a highly publicized manner, ensuring that the public sees them as socially responsible. This image becomes so powerful that it can overshadow more questionable practices that the company might engage in behind the scenes, such as exploiting workers or using environmentally harmful practices. The public, influenced by the image of the company as a generous philanthropist, may overlook these less savory actions because the dominant narrative is one of virtue. This phenomenon is an effective use of perception management by controlling the public's understanding of the company through carefully curated actions and messages. The company can maintain its reputation, even if the reality behind the scenes doesn't fully support that image. Managing expectations is another critical aspect of perception control. By setting up certain expectations, whether in politics, business, or personal life, individuals can shape how others react to their actions and decisions. For instance, a leader who constantly projects an image of being extremely competent and capable will have higher expectations placed on them. When that leader meets or exceeds those expectations, their influence grows and their reputation becomes stronger. On the other hand, if the leader fails to meet these expectations, the public's disappointment can be significant. This dynamic, however, can be controlled through careful framing and messaging, allowing the leader to either manage or shift expectations as needed. Consider a CEO who regularly portrays themselves as a charismatic and visionary leader, guiding the company toward groundbreaking innovations. The expectations placed on them are high, and as long as they deliver results either through actual innovations or by managing the narrative effectively, they maintain a powerful position. However, if they fail to meet these expectations, perhaps due to market downturns or internal inefficiencies, the disappointment of their followers or employees can be significant. However, with proper management of perception, such failures can be framed in ways that shift blame or divert attention to other factors, maintaining the CEO's positive image despite setbacks. The key takeaway from Machiavelli's focus on perception management is the realization that power often lies in how one is seen, rather than in what one truly is. Leaders, whether in the political or corporate world, understand that their success often depends on their ability to shape perceptions, manage expectations, and control the narrative. By focusing on the image they project to the public, leaders can gain influence and maintain control, often without needing to back up their image with corresponding actions. In personal relationships, the idea of managing expectations and perceptions also plays a crucial role. Think about a friendship where one person constantly projects an image of being the fun, supportive, and dependable friend, even if in reality, they are not as invested in the relationship. This image creates an expectation that they will always be there when needed, and others may overlook their failures or shortcomings because the public persona they've created is so strong. Over time, the power in the relationship shifts, and the one who manages their image effectively gains more influence in the dynamic, even if their actual contributions are minimal. Machiavelli's ideas on managing perceptions and controlling public image highlight a truth that remains as relevant today as it was in his time. The ability to manage how others perceive you is one of the most powerful tools in maintaining influence and control. While reality may be complex and nuanced, the images we create of ourselves and the narratives we shape are what others see and react to. Understanding this concept gives individuals the ability to navigate the complexities of power dynamics with a sharper sense of awareness, ultimately enabling them to wield influence in more subtle, strategic ways. Machiavelli's The Prince is often regarded as a handbook for ruthless political maneuvering and power consolidation. And one of its most compelling aspects is the practical tools it offers to those seeking to gain or maintain authority. Machiavelli's strategies, although originally designed for political leaders, have universal applications that extend beyond the realm of governance to business, personal relationships, and more. These tools are often practical, direct, and, to many, unsettling. They hinge on the manipulation of human nature, the ability to navigate crises, and the strategic use of alliances. Let's examine some of the key tools Machiavelli describes, such as strategic generosity, creating crises, and forming strategic alliances, and explore their application in real-world scenarios. One of the first tools Machiavelli discusses in The Prince is strategic generosity. He writes that one of the most effective ways to build loyalty and secure power is through acts of generosity. But these acts must be calculated, and they should not be done out of pure altruism. The key to Machiavelli's strategy of generosity is that it should be visible, memorable, and clearly linked to the person in power. The generosity must also be aimed at creating a long-term dependency, where the recipient feels a continued obligation to the giver. Take the example of a business leader who wants to gain the loyalty of their employees. A CEO may decide to offer a substantial bonus to the employees or fund an employee wellness program. On the surface, this may appear to be an act of kindness or social responsibility. However, in reality, the CEO knows that such visible acts of generosity create a sense of obligation in employees. They are more likely to work harder, be more loyal, and less likely to challenge authority, because they feel indebted to the company for its generosity. This aligns with Machiavelli's principle. A well-placed, visible act of generosity can consolidate power by making employees or any group feel that their success is tied to the leader's actions. This strategy doesn't just secure their loyalty for the present. It makes them more dependent on the leader in the future, creating a sense of ongoing allegiance. In politics, we see this dynamic play out constantly. For example, a politician might push through a popular social program, such as healthcare or tax cuts, that benefits a large portion of the population. While the benefits of the program might be real, the politician's primary motivation is not necessarily altruism, but the long-term political gain that comes from creating a base of grateful voters. The more visible the benefits of the program, the more solidified the politician's power becomes. These acts of generosity, however, are rarely done without a strategic purpose in mind. By gaining the loyalty of voters, the politician strengthens their own position. Another tool Machiavelli discusses is the use of crises. He suggests that a leader can often consolidate power and increase their authority by creating or taking advantage of a crisis. In such moments, people are more willing to accept drastic measures or authoritarian leadership because they perceive the crisis as a threat to their safety or well-being. Machiavelli points out that crises offer an opportunity for the leader to enact policies or actions that would otherwise be unacceptable under normal circumstances. The fear or uncertainty caused by the crisis often causes people to accept these measures without question. A modern example of this is the way leaders can use national or international crises to solidify their power. Consider the aftermath of the September 11th attacks in the United States. In the wake of the attacks, the government was able to pass the Patriot Act, which expanded surveillance powers and curtailed civil liberties in the name of national security. While these measures were controversial, the public, fearing further attacks, overwhelmingly supported them. Leaders used the crisis to justify actions that would have been difficult to implement without the public's fear and desire for safety. Similarly, in a business context, a CEO might leverage a financial downturn to restructure the company, lay off employees, or institute cost-cutting measures that might otherwise face resistance. By framing these actions as necessary to survive the crisis, the CEO can maintain control while simultaneously consolidating their own power within the organization. Machiavelli's discussion of crises also extends to the use of fear as a tool for maintaining control. A leader who can appear decisive and strong in the face of a crisis is more likely to be seen as competent and authoritative. The crisis, while threatening in the short term, ultimately elevates the leader's position by allowing them to act decisively and assert their authority. For instance, during a time of economic instability, a political leader who projects calm, controls the narrative, and takes swift, bold actions will likely gain support from the public, reinforcing their position. People look to strong leaders for protection during times of uncertainty, and Machiavelli recognized the opportunity for power consolidation that such situations provide. Finally, strategic alliances are another key tool that Machiavelli emphasizes. He writes that a ruler should never rely on the loyalty of others alone, but should also forge alliances that bolster their position. Alliances, whether with other political entities, business partners, or influential figures, allow a leader to expand their power base and increase their influence. However, these alliances should always be fluid and adaptable. Machiavelli warns against becoming too reliant on any one ally, as this can lead to vulnerability. Instead, a leader should always be positioning themselves to secure new allies and strengthen existing relationships, while also preparing to cut ties if necessary. In the world of business, strategic alliances are a common and powerful tool. For instance, a company might form a partnership with another firm to share resources, enter new markets, or leverage each other's strengths. By forming such alliances, the company can expand its reach and gain access to new opportunities, all while minimizing risk. However, the company must be cautious about becoming too dependent on any one partner. If the alliance begins to show signs of weakness, whether due to financial issues, market changes, or strategic shifts, the company must be prepared to cut ties and form new alliances. The concept of alliances extends beyond business to politics as well. Consider a political leader who forms alliances with powerful figures within their own party or with key members of the opposition. These alliances can help secure the leader's position by providing additional support in times of political turmoil or electoral challenges. By strategically positioning themselves as the key connector or influencer within a network of political figures, the leader increases their power. These alliances, however, are often temporary and must be continually managed. A leader may need to shift alliances or even betray former allies if it serves their long-term interests. This fluidity and adaptability are essential aspects of maintaining power, as Machiavelli highlights. A contemporary example of strategic alliances in politics is the relationship between political parties and interest groups. Politicians often form alliances with lobbyists, unions, and advocacy organizations to gain the support needed to pass legislation. In return, the politicians support the agendas of these groups. However, if the political winds change, or if a leader's position becomes threatened, these alliances can shift quickly, and the politician may be forced to abandon or betray their former allies to secure their own power. In personal relationships, too, strategic alliances can play a role. Consider a situation where two individuals form a partnership based on shared goals or mutual benefits. In the beginning, the relationship might appear strong, with both parties benefiting from the alliance. However, as circumstances change, one party may choose to distance themselves from the relationship if they feel that their interests are no longer aligned. Just as in politics or business, individuals constantly evaluate their alliances based on what benefits them the most. Maintaining such alliances requires constant attention, adaptability, and an awareness of how each party's needs and interests evolve. Machiavelli's tools for managing power, such as strategic generosity, the use of crises, and the creation of alliances are not just theoretical concepts. They're practical strategies that have been used by leaders throughout history. These tools recognize the complexities of human nature and the realities of political and organizational dynamics. They emphasize the importance of perception, the utility of fear and crisis, and the necessity of forming flexible, strategic relationships. The Machiavellian approach to power is often ruthless, but it is also deeply pragmatic. Recognizing that power is not just about ideals or morality, it is about maintaining control and influence in an unpredictable and often hostile world. Leaders who understand and apply these principles are more likely to thrive in environments where others may falter. Machiavelli's principles, while rooted in Renaissance political theory, have found striking relevance in the modern world. Today, the core ideas from his work are applied not through the brute force and raw power that defined earlier eras, but through a more subtle, sophisticated, and refined form of manipulation. The essence of Machiavellianism, understanding the nature of power, perception, and human behavior, has evolved into a toolkit used by politicians, business leaders, and celebrities alike. While the methods may appear more polished, the underlying techniques remain remarkably consistent with what Machiavelli described centuries ago. These strategies are now embedded in the campaigns, public relations, and the way influence is wielded across industries. In the modern world, Machiavelli's lessons are applied through the manipulation of public perception and the crafting of strategic narratives, rather than through overt coercion or violence. One of the most significant changes in the application of Machiavellian principles is the shift from direct, visible control to a more nuanced form of influence. Today, power is often exercised in ways that remain hidden beneath the surface, where perception is everything, and the reality can be far less important. For instance, in the realm of political campaigns, Machiavellian tactics are frequently used to shape public perception and win votes. Politicians today do not simply campaign on their records or promises. Instead, they carefully craft an image, often through media manipulation, to appear as the ideal candidate for a given moment. Political strategists understand that the public's attention span is fleeting and that what resonates most is often an emotional appeal rather than a logical one. A politician's image is everything, and much like Machiavelli's advice, they understand that perception is more critical than reality. Take, for example, a political candidate who focuses on portraying themselves as a champion of the people, someone who understands the struggles of ordinary citizens. They may highlight personal stories of overcoming adversity or carefully stage public events where they connect with voters on an emotional level. These carefully curated moments serve to build a perception of the candidate that resonates with the electorate's desires. The candidate might even make grand promises of reform, justice, or opportunity. However, once in office, these promises might be sidelined as the candidate navigates the complexities of governance. The reality of their actions may not align with the image they projected during their campaign, but the public's perception is often strong enough to ensure continued support, at least in the short term. This technique, which is grounded in Machiavelli's belief that appearances often matter more than substance, is used effectively by modern politicians to maintain power. In addition to shaping public perception, celebrities are another group that applies Machiavellian principles to manage their image and maintain their influence. In the world of entertainment, where fame can be fleeting, the ability to control one's public persona is crucial for long-term success. Celebrities and influencers often curate their lives, presenting only the parts of themselves that align with the image they wish to project. They strategically manage their personal brand by presenting a carefully crafted narrative that appeals to their audience's desires or expectations. Consider how a celebrity uses social media to maintain their image. A well-known actress, for example, might post regularly about her family, health, and charitable causes, presenting herself as a loving mother, a philanthropist, and someone who is always striving to improve the world. In reality, her personal life may be far less perfect, and the posts may not capture the full story. However, by continuously reinforcing this image, she creates a narrative that her fans and followers identify with and admire. This carefully constructed persona helps her maintain relevance and influence in a highly competitive industry. Much like the prince in Machiavelli's work, the celebrity relies on the power of perception to maintain control over their public identity. The concept of perception management extends beyond politicians and celebrities into the business world, where the same principles are applied to influence customers, investors, and employees. One of the most powerful tools in modern business is the ability to create and manage a brand image. Companies today are masters of shaping their public identity to reflect certain values, qualities, and standards that resonate with consumers. Apple, for example, has long been associated with innovation, sleek design, and simplicity. This carefully crafted image allows the company to maintain a loyal customer base, even as its products become more expensive and less innovative over time. Apple doesn't just sell products, it sells an identity, an ideal that people aspire to. This narrative created through advertising, product design, and public relations is so strong that many consumers are willing to pay a premium for the experience of owning Apple products, even if the reality doesn't always match the hype. Machiavelli's focus on manipulation also applies in the realm of corporate leadership. In many ways, business leaders today understand that controlling perceptions within their companies is just as important as controlling resources. A CEO who cultivates a public image of decisiveness, intelligence, and empathy will inspire confidence among employees, investors, and the media. This image can be enhanced through strategic communication, including public speeches, interviews, and social media presence. However, the CEO may not always embody these qualities behind closed doors. For example, the CEO might appear as a visionary leader in the public eye, always thinking several steps ahead. Yet, in practice, they may be more reactive, responding to external pressures rather than setting the direction for the company. Nevertheless, as long as their public image remains consistent and they maintain the appearance of being a competent leader, they can retain control over their position. One of the most powerful modern applications of Machiavellian principles in business is crisis management. A leader or company that can successfully navigate a crisis not only survives but often emerges stronger. Companies have learned to use crises as opportunities to assert control, consolidate power, and reshape their narratives. When a company faces a public relations scandal or a product failure, the way in which they handle the situation can significantly impact their public perception. The key is to manage the narrative effectively, often by creating a story of resilience, accountability, and recovery. For example, when a company experiences a major data breach, it could initially face backlash from the public and customers. However, by swiftly addressing the issue, communicating transparently, and presenting a plan for how the company will improve its security measures, the company can reframe the crisis as a chance to demonstrate responsibility and commitment to customer safety. This narrative management, rooted in Machiavelli's ideas of leveraging public perception, can help the company regain trust and even enhance its image in the long run. Modern marketing and advertising are perhaps the most obvious example of Machiavellian techniques in action today. Marketers understand that the emotional triggers they tap into are often more influential than the product itself. The advertisements we see every day are crafted to create an emotional response that aligns with the values or desires of the target audience. These campaigns are designed to build a specific perception of the product, company, or individual, even if the actual benefits of the product may not match the image being sold. For instance, luxury brands use a combination of exclusive marketing and high prices to build a perception of quality, status, and desirability, even when the products themselves may not be significantly better than cheaper alternatives. Social media influencers, who often have enormous sway over their followers, also use Machiavellian principles to maintain their influence. They craft an image of success, happiness, and exclusivity, sharing carefully selected moments that showcase their best qualities. These influencers understand the importance of projecting a perfect image, even if their real lives may not align with the persona they present online. By doing so, they increase their followers' investment in their narrative, ensuring that their power over their audience remains strong. The more people believe in the influencer story, the more power they have to affect their audience's behaviors, opinions, and purchasing decisions. Ultimately, the modern application of Machiavellian principles has become a sophisticated and often invisible force in society. Power is no longer wielded through overt aggression or brute strength, but through the ability to control narratives, shape perceptions, and influence others at a psychological level. Whether it's through political campaigns, brand management, corporate leadership, or social media influence, the essence of Machiavellian tactics remains unchanged. It is about understanding human nature and using that understanding to guide behavior in a way that serves one's own interests. In conclusion, the tactics Machiavelli outlined centuries ago are alive and well in the modern world, though they have been refined and adapted to fit new mediums and societal structures. Today's leaders, whether in politics, business, or entertainment, are masters of perception management, using subtle manipulation and strategic actions to maintain power and influence. The tools may have become more polished, but the underlying principles of Machiavellianism, shaping perception, managing crises, and creating strategic alliances remain as relevant as ever. The debate surrounding the ethical implications of Machiavellian principles is as old as the prince itself. Niccolò Machiavelli, often considered the father of modern political theory, is best known for his work on power, manipulation, and statecraft. His ideas have been controversial, particularly regarding the moral dimensions of power and governance. On one hand, Machiavelli seems to endorse a pragmatic and sometimes ruthless approach to leadership, where the ends justify the means. On the other hand, his critics argue that his strategies are inherently unethical, as they often involve manipulation, deceit, and the subjugation of personal virtue in favor of political success. This tension between power and ethics is at the heart of much of the discourse surrounding Machiavelli's work, and it raises an important question. Are Machiavellian tactics inherently evil? Or can they be used for good? To answer this question, it's essential to explore the nature of Machiavelli's principles and how they relate to power dynamics in both historical and contemporary contexts. Machiavelli's teachings are often summarized by his assertion that rulers must be able to adapt to the changing political environment and use whatever means necessary to maintain power. He famously argued that the ends justify the means, meaning that a ruler should not hesitate to use deceit, manipulation, or even cruelty if it serves the greater goal of securing stability and success for the state. This view has been widely criticized as morally corrupt, as it suggests that moral principles can be sacrificed in the pursuit of power. However, one of the most important aspects of Machiavelli's philosophy is the understanding that power itself is morally neutral. He does not claim that power is inherently good or bad. Instead, he argues that power is a tool that can be used for both noble and corrupt purposes. The same tactics that can be used to oppress and deceive can also be used to protect, uplift, and improve society. The question, then, is not whether Machiavellian principles are inherently evil, but rather how they are applied and for what purposes. In modern contexts, Machiavellian principles are not only applied by politicians, but also by leaders in business, media, and even in personal relationships. In these settings, Machiavellian tactics are often used to manipulate perceptions, control narratives, and secure power, but they can also be used in ways that serve broader societal goals. For example, a political leader who uses strategic alliances and crisis management to strengthen their position might also be using these tactics to push through important reforms, improve social welfare, or protect vulnerable populations. Similarly, business leaders who use strategic generosity to build loyalty within their companies can create environments that foster innovation, stability, and employee well-being, all while advancing their own financial interests. In this sense, Machiavelli's principles can be seen as morally neutral tools that, depending on the context and intent behind their application, can be used for both good and ill. The core of Machiavelli's philosophy is not the encouragement of ruthless behavior, but rather the recognition that power is an essential force in human society, and those who seek to wield it must be strategic, flexible, and willing to do whatever it takes to maintain their influence. Machiavelli's pragmatic approach to power suggests that leaders should not be constrained by abstract moral ideals, but rather should focus on the practical realities of governance and leadership. However, this approach does not mean that Machiavellian tactics should be applied indiscriminately or without consideration for their consequences. In fact, Machiavelli himself acknowledged that the most successful leaders are those who know when to act with mercy, when to be ruthless, and when to appeal to their subjects' emotions. The key is balance the ability to navigate the complexities of human nature and politics with a clear understanding of what will ultimately serve the greater good. This is where the ethical challenge of Machiavelli's principles lies. While they can be used for good, they can also be misused to exploit and manipulate others for personal gain. The idea of balancing power and ethics is particularly important in the modern world, with the stakes of power, whether in politics, business, or personal relationships, are higher than ever. In today's globalized, interconnected society, the use of Machiavellian tactics has the potential to influence millions of lives, making it all the more important to consider the ethical ramifications of these tactics. For instance, a business leader who uses manipulation to secure contracts or undermine competitors may be pursuing personal gain, but they may also be jeopardizing the well-being of their employees, customers, and the broader economy. Similarly, a politician who uses deceptive tactics to gain power may succeed in the short term, but the cost of public trust, stability, and long-term progress. Ultimately, the key to applying Machiavellian principles ethically is self-awareness and responsibility. Leaders and individuals who use Machiavellian tactics must be conscious of their motives and the potential consequences of their actions. Power, when used responsibly, can be a force for good, driving positive change and improving the lives of others. However, when used irresponsibly or for selfish purposes, it can lead to corruption, exploitation, and harm. It is the responsibility of those who wield power to ensure that their actions are aligned with ethical principles, even if those actions are informed by Machiavellian strategies. Understanding Machiavelli's work does not mean adopting his tactics blindly. It means recognizing the role that power plays in shaping human society and understanding how to use that power strategically and responsibly. By recognizing the potential for manipulation and exploitation, individuals can learn to protect themselves from being manipulated and can use Machiavellian principles to navigate complex social, political, and professional landscapes. The goal is not to embrace manipulation for its own sake, but to understand how power dynamics work and how to respond to them in a way that serves one's interests without causing harm to others. The most important takeaway from Machiavelli's philosophy is that power, in its various forms, is an inescapable part of human life. While Machiavelli's tactics may seem ruthless, they are based on a clear-eyed understanding of human nature and the realities of governance and leadership. The ethical challenge lies not in the application of these tactics, but in ensuring that they are used with the greater good in mind. Leaders who understand the complexities of power and who use Machiavellian principles strategically, without losing sight of their ethical responsibilities, can achieve lasting success and positive outcomes. The true test of Machiavellian tactics is not whether they are used, but how and why they are applied, whether they serve to advance the common good or simply further the interests of the few at the expense of the many. In conclusion, understanding Machiavelli's principles of power is not about embracing manipulation and deceit as a way of life. It's about recognizing that power is an essential part of human society and learning how to wield it in ways that are both strategic and ethical. By doing so, individuals can protect themselves from those who would manipulate them, and they can use Machiavellian insights to navigate complex situations with greater awareness, responsibility, and integrity. The goal is not to manipulate others, but to understand the dynamics of power in order to act in ways that are both effective and just. So, after exploring Machiavelli's fascinating insights into power, control, and manipulation, what have we learned? The truth is, Machiavelli's principles aren't just for kings or politicians. They apply to everyone, from the way we manage our personal relationships to how businesses operate and how leaders rise to power. What's even more intriguing is that these principles aren't inherently evil. They are tools that can be used for both good and bad, depending on how we choose to wield them. The key takeaway is understanding how power works and how it can work for or against you. Understanding Machiavellian tactics gives you the ability to see the world around you more clearly, enabling you to make smarter decisions, protect yourself from manipulation, and even use some of these insights to advance your own goals. But here's the big question: will you use this knowledge to create positive change, or will you fall victim to those who use these same tactics against you? The choice is yours. Before you go, don't forget to like this video if you found it valuable, share with your friends and anyone who's into power dynamics, leadership, or psychology, and subscribe to the channel for more insights like this. We cover deep, thought-provoking topics that make you question everything about human nature. And if you really want to show your appreciation, don't forget to donate a super thanks. It really helps support our mission to bring you more of this content. Thank you for watching. And remember, power is all around us. How you choose to understand it and use it is up to you. Stay curious, stay aware, and keep questioning the world around you. See you in the next video.